Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank Lord Faulkner, Janet Hills, MBE, Professor Virginia Berridge and their external reference group for this leading international study, which has looked at all the latest evidence from around the world. I'm clear that we need fresh thinking on how to reduce the substantial harms associated with drug-related crime in our communities. The independent London Drugs Commission report makes a compelling evidence-based case for the decriminalisation of possession of small quantities of natural cannabis, and says that the current sentencing for those caught in possession cannot be justified given its relative harm and people's experience of the justice system. Synthetic cannabis, which the report does not propose making any legislative changes to, uses chemical psychoactive compounds to replicate the effects of natural cannabis, but induces more severe and unpredictable adverse health effects. However, it should be noted that this is just one of the 42 recommendations, and I'd encourage anyone interested to review the whole report, which makes a number of recommendations on education, healthcare, and more effective, equitable policing for City Hall, the government, and others. It is the most wide-ranging and detailed report of its kind in the country, and the recommendations should be looked at and taken seriously by numerous bodies. We have an opportunity now to deal with the concerns raised in this report as a public health issue and start a national debate, from the clear need for better education on the risk and uses of cannabis to the disproportionate impact cannabis-related stops and searches are having on black communities. I'm pleased that the Met Police Service are already making improvements to their stop and search activities, supported by the introduction of the Stop and Search Charter early this year. Both the Charter and the Commissioner's report highlight the need for, and the Commission's report highlight the need for an improved quality of stop and search, focusing on the areas of greatest harm, improving the quality of encounters, and taking on board the view of the public. Improved training, community engagement, and enhanced oversight is already improving the way this vital power is used in our communities. The Commission's report has been shared with relevant parties, including local authorities, government, the Met Police Service, NHS London, and other health and education partners. I've asked City Hall officers to work with their counterparts in these organisations to understand how the recommendations can be taken forward.
Thank you for that response. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for the bravery you've shown speaking out on this topic. The war on drugs has absolutely failed, and it takes a lot of bravery to come out and say that and to speak up against these laws. So thank you for describing the way that the report's going to be used. Yesterday in Police and Crime Committee, we had the opportunity to speak to the Deputy Commissioner, and I asked him if any of the recommendations were a surprise or new to the Met, and he said no, which is obviously slightly disappointing given the extent of the report. And then I also asked if he thought it was going to make a difference, and he said it was more reinforcing rather than anything new. So I was quite concerned about that, given that the report finds that black communities are 3.3 times more likely to be stopped and searched, and 3.1 for drug-related stops. And then also on the day that you released the report, the government obviously dismissed it quite quickly. So I just wondered, within the Met pushing back and the government pushing back, what action you're planning to take to make sure that the recommendations actually make a difference.
Well, I've forgotten what Einstein's definition of insanity was, but clearly the status quo isn't working right. And I think what's refreshing about the work of the Commission is the breadth of people they've spoken to, not just in this country, but across the globe. And they've even been quite candid about saying what the short-term benefits are versus the long-term unknowns. And that's why they've been criticised on the one side for not being, inverted commas, bold enough, and the other side for being too radical, and so, which is interesting in and of itself. So the three areas I'll ask us to focus on is, yes, there's a policing issue, which you've alluded to. There's also better education, improved healthcare. Now, in the past, you've talked about particularly healthcare of those to do with drugs and so forth. That's why the education part is so important. So even though there won't be a change of legislation in the short term, I think with improved healthcare, better education, we can make progress. And also, she'll be aware the College of Policing, there's national guidance now in relation to, smelling cannabis shouldn't be the sole reason for a stop and search and so forth. So I think, progress is being made, but clearly not as far or as quickly as we'd like.
I completely agree with those points on education and health, and obviously stigma and people being able to seek support is a huge part of reducing drug harm. So you mentioned the smell of cannabis there. So that was one of the points that I put to the Deputy Commissioner. And he said that they already have that guidance and actually didn't think that changing the law would make much difference, which is hugely concerning given that Faulkner himself had said that a number of stops are due to the smell of cannabis. So I just wondered what you thought specifically about that and what you're going to be doing to make sure that is actually changed?
Well, I didn't see what the Deputy Commissioner said in relation to that, but my understanding is that the guidance is quite clear. There should be sole reason, the smell of cannabis and stuff. But I'll check because I've not practiced.
Yeah,
for a
it's
while.
more that it's already that he was saying that it's already in their guidance that it says that. So changing the law and the code isn't going to make any difference. Well,
I think what the Deputy Commissioner may have been alluding to is the charter in terms of the additional work the Met Police is doing over and above the other 42 forces in terms of the Stop and Search Charter.
And when do you think the Stop and Search Charter will make those changes then? So, by the end of the year, will we see a change to disproportionality, a stop in the smell of cannabis alone? Like, what's the timescale for that?
Well, we've got the data on a regular basis in relation to the issues of stop and search, including ethnicity, national origin and so forth. There's also now more and more involvement of the community in terms of qualitative analysis of stops and searches. Shall be aware now, unlike in the past, that includes having access to body-worn videos and seeing the sort of improvements and changes. And also to reassure her, there's been a change in terms of training, in terms of officers having confidence, understanding the law and so forth. So, I hope to see progress, in realistically in the medium to long term. I think in the short term, you're going to see this year, if for example, that's what she was alluding to, the difference.
And then just briefly on the conversations you've had with the government. So obviously, they did make that quick dismissal. I wondered what your next action is going to be to try and push for this, because obviously you've shown big support for this, and I don't just want this to be a report that sits on the shelf.
I want to be candid. I don't think the government's going to be changing the law in relation to classification that the Commission talked about. But there are other things that can be done short of that legislative change. And just use this week as an example. Whatever your views are on assisted dying, if we were speaking 3 years ago, we wouldn't have seen the sort of movement there's been on that issue. So I won't be downbeat in relation to the chances of progress in this area going forward.
Well, I'm very happy to work with you on that. You know that this is an area that I care passionately about, so if there's anything I can do to support you. And then just briefly in the last few seconds, just to raise a letter that I'm going to send you regarding Southall Black Sisters service that they support victims of domestic abuse and people who don't have access to public funds. They have a cliff edge of their funding at the end of September, and there's a gap between the new commission service. So I just want to raise this with you.
I know them very well, so let me look into that.
Thank you.